Good morning and welcome back to Football League World TV. It's Friday morning. It's time for the EFL betting show. We're going to be looking ahead to this weekend's EFL fixtures and picking out our best bets for the weekend. My name is Sam Rourke, the Chief Editor of Football League World at UK. I'm joined by my colleague Ben Wignall to run through his selections. Ben, how are you getting on this morning on what is a very hot morning?
Yeah, you can barely see me. It's very sunny for the north. Yeah, all good. Wasn't on the betting show last week, but I've made my return this week, and I've coming off a bit of decent form last week. Only a Premier League team let me down on my weekly Saturday accumulator. I'm hoping for a bit more luck this week, but my EFL picks seem pretty solid. So hopefully, I'm looking to keep that run going.
Yeah, fingers crossed. If you haven't watched the EFL betting show here on FLW TV before, we run through 4 different selections. Ben will select a banker, an accumulator, a value bet, and a wild card. This is just a reminder to all, please do gamble responsibly, 18 and over. Finally, we are broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Send in your bets for this weekend. Who do you fancy to pick up 3 points this coming weekend? Right, let's start off with the banker. Right, Ben, what is your banker in the EFL this weekend?
I found it hard, this one. I scoured through all 3 leagues. It's very hard, isn't it, in the first couple of weeks when teams are still getting a feel for each other. But I've gone with Northampton at home to Hartlepool. I found them at around the best price of 4 to 5 last night. Northampton were very solid last season. I know they've, best very defensively as well. They only conceded, I think, the least amount of goals in League Two. They lost one of the main defenders in Fraser Horsfall to Stockport County, and they conceded twice on the opening day, which was potentially a cause of concern. But they scored 3 that day. They drew on the road against Grimsby last week, and if a team wins the home games and draws the away games, are in pretty good stead, and I can see them going well again this season. They're facing a team who had a pretty rough start in Hartlepool. There's been a lot of changes there this summer. As key players like Bogle, Neil Byrne, experienced players have left. Paul Hartley's coming as the new manager, replacing Graham Lee. There's been a lot of new signings there, and I just think they may take a little bit more time to gel. There's been a lot of players coming from north of the border, from Scotland, where Hartley was managing before, and they've lost the first game 4-0 away at Walsall, which was pretty poor outcome, considering Walsall had made quite a few changes as well. And even though they drew last weekend against AFC Wimbledon, I think the hammering they took off Blackburn this week in the Carabao Cup will have been a bit of a confidence knocker. So I can't see them having too much confidence going into this. I think that could be playing to Northampton's strengths. They're a very solid team at the back and solid, especially from set pieces. So I think they'll probably take all the beating this weekend.
Yeah, like you say, Paul Hartley's side have been shipping goals since the start of the season. Well, there we go. Ben opting for Northampton as his banker, best price 4 to 5 with various bookmakers. Well worth taking a look at that one. Right, let's look at the accumulator next. Right, Ben, let's get your Aki for this weekend.
I've gone with a 4-fold. Obviously, Northampton are on there, and quite ironic you say Aki, because Accrington Stanley are on there as my second pick. They're playing Burton at home. Aki have had a pretty good start to the season. He drew against Charlton on the opening day, who you'd probably expect to be up there. And then he won away at Shrewsbury, 1-0. I think that game was probably marred by a double red card. Sorry, not a double red card. It's a red card incident in the second half that probably overshone the whole game. But it was a solid 1-0 win on the road. And considering John Coleman's probably not got the options up front that he'd like to. I mean, obviously since the start of the year, he's lost Dion Charles and Colby Bishop, 2 of the talisman of the club. And in the first 2 games, he's been playing Matt Law, who's a player who's coming from Brackley Town in the 6th tier of the league, and Joe Pritchard, who's primarily a midfielder. I think he'll want some new additions up front in the coming weeks, but he's not done them any harm. 3 goals in the first 2 games, and I can see him just being a little bit too good for Burton, who've shipped 7 goals in the first 2 games, which is pretty poor, although I think last week was marred, by the first minute red card to Conor Shaughnessy against Bristol Rovers. That was a catalyst, that 4-0 drubbing that Joey Barton's men gave them. But I can just see Atkinson being, a bit too solid on their own turf against Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. So that's my second team. I'm sticking in League One for the third team. I'm going with Derby at home to Barnsley. I think if Barnsley may have comprehensively defeated Cheltenham last week, I think I'd have this as maybe a draw. But I think with, Michael Hellick, who's probably Barnsley's best player overall, being injured for a few more weeks, is a key part of their defence. I can probably see Derby coming out on top. I don't think Barnsley are anywhere near the, where they need to be in the final third. I think they could do one or two more signings, and until that happens, I think they'll be a bit less clinical than you'll imagine them to be, and they'll be definitely stronger in the months to come. I just think Derby are more of the finished article in terms of the starting 11 and the options off the bench they've got. So I can see them with their crowd behind them getting the win against Barnsley, who've still, a work in progress under Michael Duff. And my final team is more of a bigger odd shot. The first three have been more 5 to 6, 19 to 20 odds. This one's Millwall at home to Coventry there, 29 to 20. I think I did and ah about this one briefly, but looking at Coventry, obviously they drew the first game with Sunderland 1-1, but they missed out last week due to the pitch not being fit to play on against Rotherham, and I think that kind of inactivity might make them a bit rusty. Obviously, they played against Bristol City in the Carabao Cup and got eliminated, but that was a much changed team, and the so-called first teamers will come back in for this one, and like I said, they might be a little bit rusty, and they go into a place in the den that's very hard to get points from. Millwall obviously won the opening day against Stoke 2-0 from two set pieces, and obviously they lost against Sheffield United last week, but not many teams will go to Bramall Lane and get points this season in the league. And I think Millwall obviously have made a few good signings this summer, and Coventry haven't done a lot in the transfer market, and they've also lost Callum O'Hare to an injury. When you lose your biggest creative threat, it's always going to be tough going to a place like Millwall. So I think if Millwall iron out the mistakes that they made last week at Bramall Lane, I think they can come out on top on this one. So just to recap on that, it's Millwall, Accrington, Derby and Northampton. And last time I checked, that ACCA paid 14.77 to 1 with Sky Bet. So if you put £10 on that, it would pay back £157.66.
Nice returns there for a fourfold. Let us know your thoughts on Ben's accumulator for this weekend. If you're watching, just drop a comment and we'll get your comments live up on the show. Right, two more selections to come up next. First up, the value bet. Right, Ben, have you found any value this weekend?
Like I said earlier, it's hard to pick in this stage of the season when teams are still, feeling each other out. But I've gone with Birmingham away at Cardiff. They're generally, 9-4 shot. I think compared to what they did last season, Birmingham have struggled the last couple of years at the wrong end of the table, but they've always survived whatever manager they've had. And I think under John Eustace, obviously, they brought a few decent loan players in, Dion Sanderson, Austin Trusty. John Ruddy's come in between the sticks and kind of shored things up with his experience. I think they look pretty decent in the first few games. Luton away is a very tough place to go. The momentum they've got from last season, and they came out of that with a goalless draw, and they beat Huddersfield last week. And obviously, Huddersfield look to be struggling a bit with the kind of transition to Danny Schofield being head coach. But I don't think you can take anything away from Birmingham. They've kind of used to stuck with the system that Lee Boy had, a kind of 3-5-2 last season, and it seems to be working in the early stages. And I know Cardiff did beat Norwich at home on the opening day, so they're perfect, 1-for-1 in the league at home. And don't think you can take too much notice of that 3-0 defeat they had against Portsmouth in the Carabao Cup. Morrison made a lot of changes to his team, and I don't think any of them players that came in would have strengthened their credentials to be playing this weekend. But I wouldn't have expected him to personally lose to Reading last weekend. I know you might see different, Sam, as a Reading fan, but yeah, I would have expected him to come away with a draw, because I don't think, obviously, Reading, we know, aren't in the strongest position when it comes to their squad and the recruitment they've done with the restrictions they've got. So I would have expected Cardiff with the squad they've got now to come away with something there. And I think they just could be a little bit vulnerable to potentially a 1-0 Birmingham win, potentially from a set piece. You've got threats from that angle, and the likes of Jutkiewicz and Troy Deeney are big threats from those kind of ranges. So I don't think Birmingham are a bit of value at a shade of 9-4. They could escape from South Wales, with a narrow win.
Yeah, 9-4. A decent price there for Birmingham, who have been okay since the start of the season for sure. Let us know your thoughts on Ben's selection of Birmingham to beat Cardiff as his value bet this weekend. Do you see the value in that selection? Let us know. Right, one final selection, and that is the wild card. Okay, if you haven't seen the show before, the wildcard bet is a bet that is a little bit left field, but we still feel has got a chance of coming in. Ben, what's your wildcard this weekend?
Well, if you watched me on the betting show last season at all, I like my wildcard to be full of goals. So I've gone with an over 3.5 goals treble, which obviously you need the games to have 4 or more goals in. I've gone for one from each league. In League Two, I've gone with Salford against Crewe. I think Salford had 15 shots last week in a goalless draw against Swindon, so they're definitely creating the chances. But they scored twice against Mansfield on the opening day, and I think that back at home they, could be a decent proposition to get a goal or two. And Crewe have scored 5 goals in the first 2 league games. They won 2-1 on the opening day against Rochdale and battered Harrogate 3-0 last season. They looked pretty decent on their return to the 4th tier, so I think this game could be one with a few goals in. League One, I've gone with Plymouth against Peterborough. I think we know there's a lot of goals in Peterborough team. Johnson, Clark Harris, Jack Marriott, 2 very good strikers for League One level, and they've scored 6 goals in their opening 2 games. I think it'll be interesting to see if those 2 can play together on a kind of long-term basis. I know Grant McCann changed it up on the first day of the season, 2-0 down against Cheltenham. He brought Marriott off the bench and played him as a tandem. I don't think that was the plan from the start of the game, but it clearly worked, and they played together again briefly against Morecambe, and it worked. And I think Plymouth, they've had 32 shots in 2 games, so they're clearly creating chances in the system they've got. Obviously, they've not been prolific so far this season. Only scored once against Barnsley on the opening day, but I think that the goals will come with the having 15 or 16 shots a game. And the game I've gone with in the Championship is Blackpool versus Swansea. This is more to do with Swansea's attack. They've got the goals from last season, Joe Pirro and Michael Obafemi, and I think it's only a matter of time before those 2 click. And against a team like Blackpool, whose defence I'm not particularly convinced by. I think Ekiteta was solid last season, but Reece Williams, I think he's still got something to prove at Championship level, and obviously he's playing against a former team, and he was on loan at Swansea last season. But I do think Pirro and Obafemi could potentially have the way with Blackpool this weekend and maybe score 2 or 3 goals, which would obviously delight me. But it would delight me more if the pick came in, and that treble is around 41 to 1. So stick a fiver on that. It's around 220 quid or so back. So you're obviously hoping for goals and you're cheering them in. I find them a bit more fun than going for either draws or under goals. It's a good way of egging the goals on throughout the leagues.
Yeah, fingers crossed for goals for you this weekend, Ben. Let us know your thoughts on Ben's wild card bet there in the comments. Just a final reminder, please do gamble responsibly, 18 and over. Okay, right. Well, that brings today's EFL betting show to a close here on Football League World TV. Fingers crossed you have some luck this weekend if you are placing any bets. Just after this show, about 11 o'clock, we've got our EFL weekend preview show hosted by Alfie Burns. So make sure to stay tuned to that. We're going to be looking ahead to what is another exciting EFL weekend of football. Right, well, that brings this to an end. Ben, thanks for joining me. We shall see you soon.